Welcome to the 878th meeting, special meeting of the Board of Directors, MSAD number 27. Roll call, please.
Keith Jandro.
Here.
Kurt Susi.
Here.
Jake Terrio.
Here.
Toby Jandro.
Here.
Barry Willett.
Here.
Gary Sibley.
Here.
Sarah Ashley.
Here.
Emily Willett.
Adjustments?
And I did put the adjustment on your agenda. Under item B, we're going to add, under new business, final read of the budget for the email I sent you all this morning, that we have some new guidance. Also, out of kindness to our guests, I'm going to recommend that we swap our new business item A, swap that in to come first before the old business item A, if that's all right with everyone.
Yep.
Jake, you all set?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Can you hear us?
You have to do one of these?
You have internet at all over there in Canada, or is it just slow?
We got mouse and treadmills and stuff. No, we have slow internet.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, good to see you again.
Thank you.
Okay.
So we'll start off with new business A, which is a calendar revision and harvest break suggestion that we have. I do have a presentation either on the big screen or you have handouts. I'll ask that you use either one. Again, when we send out letters to our area farmers, we wanted to make it clear that our goal in this proposal is not to end harvest break. Our goal is to try to work with the mess that we have, which is COVID-19, and trying to figure out how our school year is going to start next year. So that's what this is all about, and I'll just start by talking about the COVID-19 impact on our schools. Right now, in order for schools to reopen in August, the CDC is giving us the following guidance. We will have to place seats, desks at least 6 feet apart in classrooms. We're going to have to turn those desks to face the same direction. Students will not be able to face one another in tables, that type of thing. So essentially we're talking about maybe half of the kids in a classroom, maybe even less. We're going to have to create social distance between children on school buses. Right now the guidance we have for school buses is 1 child per seat every other row, which means we can put 14 students on a bus based on the guidance we have right now.
How many would that be to Allagash?
That would be chirps all day long.
Okay.
So you can see our problem. We have to ensure that student and staff groupings are as static as possible by having the same group of children stay with the same staff all day for young children, as much as possible for older children. Now you can think about a high school schedule where students follow a schedule that changes class 6-7 times a day. We probably would not be doing that same sort of thing. We would probably be asking teachers to go to different cohorts of kids if we're going to have the kids stay together as much as possible. And then restrict mixing between groups. And then above all that, right now we have Governor Mills' reopening plan. She has that 4-phase plan right now, each month phasing in a new step. The August guidance still has groups of 50 or less as the grouping guidance. So right now we're set to start school August 22 for students. We would not be able to have more than 50 students on site based on the governor's guidance in August. We don't know what September says yet because they didn't extend her phase guidance to September. So less students in the schools each day equals a new way to design the school year. We know that we've got to plan for various things. We presented to you our remote learning plan back on March 16 that talked about how we're going to go into remote learning. We since presented you a plan of how we're going to try to go back. But throughout the remote learning, we did learn some valuable lessons. We learned that learning can continue while students are not in school. We know that. Some more than others. We've had some students showing great success. We've had some students not showing great success. And part of that has to deal with connectivity, it has to deal with engagement and investment, it has to deal with a whole lot of things, but we do know that it is possible. We do know, excuse me, that learning opportunities do not have to happen between 8 and 2:45 in a remote learning environment. And you probably, for those of you who have children that participated in remote learning, you probably found that learning happened more in pockets of time and less in strict periods of time. And then teachers can and will be trained on how to deliver remote instruction via live video or video recordings, both of which can be viewed by students anywhere and anytime. So we know that this anytime, anywhere learning becomes a little more flexible with remote learning than it does in classroom instruction. And we make no mistake about it, we prefer classroom instruction and we want our students to be in classrooms in the fall. We just need to plan what if we can't? What if the governor says you still can't? Or what if the governor says make it happen with groups of 50 or less? We're going to have to think about how to do that. So we're planning for the school year right now, and we're planning for a variety of different possibilities. And a lot of that is scary, and it's scary when we talk to our folks about it, but we know one of 3 options are going to happen. Option 1 is ultimately what we want. We want students back here in the fall. We want them all in the schools. We want them here. And our teachers want them here, and our parents want them here. We get that, and that's what we want. But option 2, we understand, is a possibility where students are back to remote learning just like they're leaving off tomorrow as the last day of school. And that's very scary. And that's why we asked you to allow us to prepare our teachers better over the next 2 weeks with professional development, and we're doing that. We're going to prepare them better so that if remote learning continues, we have a stronger basis of what remote learning can be and should be and will be. And that's all based on data that we've collected from surveys, from parents, from teachers, and from students. And then option 3 is what a lot of us are thinking is most likely going to happen, where some students are back in school and some students are remote learning. And that's because of a variety of possibilities. 1, the social distancing guidelines will not allow us to have students all in school at the same time. May be possible for a small school. So, a Wisdom or a Dr. Levac may be possible. Here at Fort Kent Elementary and community high schools, it's not going to be possible with social distancing guidelines. And then, even if the social distancing guidelines are laxed a little bit, we have to remember there will be some individuals with health concerns that keep students and teachers learning and teaching remotely at home, and that's just a reality that we have to deal with. If you're immune compromised and your doctor says you should not be in school with the virus still alive and there's no cure for it, we have to be ready for that. So in each scenario that I've just presented, we feel that the later we start in the school year, even if it's a couple weeks, we have more time to prepare. We've got nothing from the DOE right now in the form of guidance. Last we heard that it's likely going to come out in July because they're still not sure on how to guide us, because things are fluid and changing all the time. Here's a draft copy of the calendar as we would propose for an adjustment to the one that was already approved. And I'm just going to highlight September and October so we can focus on that, because that's the only change to the previously adopted calendar. In this design, we are proposing we start 2 weeks later, which would be a September 1 start for workshop days. The students start on September 3. And we start school as normal. You'll notice that harvest break is still highlighted in brown or orangish brown at the bottom of September and October. We would like to provide the opportunity for students who work on potato farms to still go work on a potato farm. We did it this year in an extension. If you remember, there was a real rainy harvest. and the farmers needed students to continue into that third week. We allowed those students to go work. They signed off with teachers, essentially saying they would do their work remotely. We've just been through a period of remote learning where we've got this pretty well figured out, and we're even going to be better when the start of the school year starts. We feel that we can provide the framework for remote learning for the harvesting kids that is possible and allows them to go work on a potato farm, still keep up with their schoolwork on a minimal basis, and I'll show you how we're going to recapture that in a minute. And that way it's the best of both worlds. We get a later start of the school year, we allow the kids to go harvest, and we all know that's about 10 to 15% of our student population. No, we wouldn't allow kids to go work at Shop and Save. No, we wouldn't let them go work at other businesses that would be strictly for harvest break and students who work on a potato farm. So that's what we'd like to do in this proposition. We know that we can support harvest break in each scenario. We know that with the remote learning plan, we can make it happen. If all students are back in the fall, we're going to have to be doing a lot of grouping and regrouping, and we're going to be figuring things out those first few weeks anyway, so we can work with the students who are going to go to harvest, make sure that we front load a lot of that work, and make sure we make them understand, their families understand what they'll need to do during that remote learning plan. If some of our students, getting back to option 2, excuse me, if we're all in remote learning, you know what? We've had kids working these past 10 weeks and going to school, and they've managed it. Some better than others. The ones that haven't, we've had to reach out to mom and dad and say, listen, you need to talk to the employer, and those things have been adjusted. And in option 3, we have a way where we can think about, you know what, if some students are going to be in school and some are going to be remote learning and we have to swap kids, maybe we start school with the kids that are going to harvest, and then when harvest breaks comes in, we bring in another cohort of kids so the harvest kids can be on harvest break during that time. We know that we can be really creative and flexible to allow this to happen. And another support that we would like to put in place, we've already spoken to you all about a remediation period, those first few weeks of school, where we think we're really going to have to work with grouping and regrouping kids, assessing them, figuring out where they are, where they left us, meeting again with the teachers that they left on March 16, and just kind of closing that out, but really working on figuring out the holes that kids missed. We would also like to entertain another remediation, what we're calling a remediation and acceleration week, because some kids won't need remediation. Some kids they'll need more. They'll need to just accelerate. And we feel that by creating these remediation and acceleration weeks at the beginning of the year, and then again right after harvest break, you'll see that we have that Valley workshop on the 5th of October. We can get together in teams of teachers, figure out exactly where the kids are after harvest break, and have that week to remediate and accelerate so that those kids aren't felt like they're being penalized for missing those 2 weeks of school while they were helping our local industry and helping the farmers out. We really feel that this would be a good plan to help make the best of all happen. That's our plan. That's what we're proposing to you. And if you agree with our plan, what we would be asking from this board tonight is to approve the updated calendar that has the 2-week later start. But I did want to allow for any of our guests to voice their concerns or talk about what they feel with this plan. So do we have any?
First of all,
Sorry.
this is the first time this board hears of this.
Yes.
So we haven't discussed this.
Yeah.
This is new to us,
Brand new.
as it is to you.
Yeah.
And also, in the past, there was 1 week guaranteed for a potato harvest, 1 week. And you had an option of before or after, depending on the growing season and stuff. So basically, in the past, the last week of September was always guaranteed to be harvest. But you might have it the week before, or you might have the second week the week after. That's how it used to work.
Right.
That's how it was, because people were planning vacations, and all of a sudden, farmers needed another week. That's the reason for it.
had we not had this remote learning experience, I don't know that I could have come to this board and say, we're ready for remote learning to happen in harvest break. I couldn't have done that to you, and I don't think we ever would have been ready to really, we're ready now. And we're gonna be even more ready in the fall because we've learned from our sampling here this past 10 weeks. We know that we can manage students' workflow from afar. We know that students can manage work and school, and especially if they're not learning between 8 and 2:30, you know, they can take opportunities. Harvest time, there's bound to be rainy days where the kids can participate in school on those days, and then harvest when it's nice weather, so we'll have that nice blend. We really feel that it's a possibility this year. And if this year we try it and it's not favorable, the students do not feel like they were supported for X, Y, and Z, then we go back to normal when we are back to normal, but we're not gonna be normal in the fall. I'm hopeful that some students will be here. I'm fearful that none of them will be here, and we're gonna be remote learning again.
Anybody?
I agree. I mean, if this makes sense, and if the parents and everybody is on board, I mean, it's gotta work, I guess.
It would have to be a contract like we did this year, where the students sign, the parents sign, the farmer signs off, and the student goes to see all their teachers to front load all that work and say, this is what we're gonna be doing those 2 weeks, and we did it
But
with
they
our.
would need to front load it.
They would have to front load.
Don't give it to, because
Better-
harvest is big
we need a
days,
motion.
6 to 9 o'clock at
That's
night. You
correct.
can't expect them to go home and do homework,
Correct, and that's why that week after harvest break would
which
be
I like that, yes.
dedicated just to
Yeah,
catching up.
that's
What was
a
that,
good
Keith?
idea.
We need to make a motion to accept the article to accept the modifications to the calendar for the next school year,
I'm
right?
not ready to do that right now. I'm not ready to change tradition, long-time tradition. I'm not ready to all of a sudden, the only people that, you know, do we have harvest break or do we not? And do we just have a harvest break? This is something we haven't even discussed.
Right.
We have not discussed.
Well, that's why
We
we make a
don't-
motion and enter into discussion like we would any other article, Barry.
Oh, I see what you're saying. You
Okay,
wanna-
that's, I thought you
procedurally,
wanted to make a motion.
Somebody makes a motion, then we
Right.
talk about it.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
just
Yes.
It's a,
how we do business, right?
it's the procedural.
Is there anybody else in the farming that has an opinion? Just as long as you have staff, you're happy.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well,
As long as-
You need the hands.
But it's gotta work for them also, I mean,
Yeah.
we don't want the students to.
So-
Because I can tell you that if it's not front loaded, or if they're expected to do homework during harvest, we'll see no kids. Because a lot of these kids didn't accept the extension because these teachers were expecting way too much
Exactly.
from them.
That's exactly.
Okay, I understand that. Is there anybody else besides students that you hire during harvest? That are
Besides
part of the
students?
school system?
No,
We have.
we have,
But
we have.
it's not like a definite.
Okay.
We have.
Good, Keith, I'm ready. I thought you were making a motion to already
Well, I
vote.
guess we just jumped the, put the cart in front of the horse, but that's all right.
Yeah.
We do that once in a while.
I think I had a family approach me, and this probably isn't gonna be a thing that happens across the board, but there was a family that waited until we had done the last schedule, and they booked a vacation in California for a full week during harvest break. If a family comes forward with evidence that they've gone ahead and booked that before we change this, can we treat them as though on par? Cause it seems really awful to have them change everything.
These things happen. I mean, they're
Yeah.
not gonna be the first family to miss a week in the school year.
Okay.
And that's settled through the principal's office, where, again, they get a waiver, and
Yeah.
they meet with all their teachers and get all that front loaded.
Because the last time we talked about moving harvest, I got a panicked call from a parent who, and this is a parent, I don't think the kids have ever missed a day of school,
Right?
and they're freaking out. So,
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Are we in
Anybody else
discussion?
have comments? Jake?
We have a motion.
We didn't
Do you want a
motion
second?
yet.
I'll second.
Well, it was a motion to discuss, we already did, I think.
If Robert was here, Robert's rules,
Yeah,
he'd be
We-
shooting himself.
I think your point was just so that we could enter into discussion, but we're most of the
Exactly.
way through discussion at this point.
My concern is, that once people hear that this is happening, especially that are affected by the farming or education, if they like this or not. The thing is what this does, it tells you that school does not start when it normally starts. It starts in September. This is what this does. This basically delays the school startup by 2 weeks or 3.
And I can
That's
tell
exactly
you,
what this does.
unless the governor changes her guidance, we can't start school on August 22, so it will be remote learning. Or a blend of remote learning and on-site up to 50 kids, because that's the guidance we have.
But you already said it's not gonna be normal
Right.
anyways,
Right.
so why not just stay with the schedule we have right now? You just said we're ready to go.
Well, this
So
is a
why
new
bother
schedule,
changing
Gary.
any of it?
This
Because
is a new schedule, Gary. Right, a new
I
calendar.
understand that.
But which one are you, Gary, I don't understand you. I'm with Jake. What do you, when you say we have one ready to go, you mean the one we've already voted on?
Right.
The original schedule, not this
The
new one?
original
Okay,
schedule.
sorry.
Why bother change that? You said we're all set to go with remote learning, whatever, the new school year is not gonna be normal. Why bother disrupt that? Because with this governor, the way she's making decisions, we're gonna be talking about something else here in a month. Why change it?
Do you not want to start school in August? Remote learning?
I want kids in school. Everyone wants kids in school. All I know is right now, in August, we can't have all kids in school. So that's the only thing I know right now. Do I think miraculously it's gonna change in September? Probably not, but what if there is new guidance at that time? That's the only thing I'm thinking about.
We have to have the same schedule, plus or minus 3 or 4 days as Madawaska, Frenchville, and St. Adet. One way or the other. That's, we have, yes.
Because of the CTE center.
Yeah.
Have they already been talking about this?
Madawaska has approved this. 33 will take it to their board on Monday.
Heck, they usually
My
tell us what to
experience
do.
at 33 has been of all of the districts, and this is not anything I can prove, it's just something I've heard, that they've been the district that's been most reluctant to make any changes to harvest. Are you getting a feel from them then?
We've done the same thing that we've done here. We've invited the farmers to come in and do the same thing. So
When's their meeting?
Monday.
Gary, you seem concerned.
I'm annoyed with this whole COVID thing.
Well, that's fine, Gary, but
Well, no,
I know, I'd
because
like
it
to know.
changes so much, and there's no rational thinking about it.
I guess my question for you, because I wanna understand, is it, I know you work with farmers. Is there a concern from farmers that this is going to be problematic?
No, it's the whole issue of the
Okay.
COVID thing and carrying on the way it is.
And you're afraid that it
If
just
we could
sets a
have the
precedent
kids,
for
if
future
we could
years.
bring all the kids back to school and just say they're protesting something, we'd be all set.
Are you worried that this sets a precedent for future years?
No,
Okay.
I'm just thinking that this is gonna change multiple times again, and we're premature on making any decisions from
Well,
my
I think
estimation.
like Ben says, the only thing we know, right, is that in August we can't all be here.
Right.
So it's not gonna get,
And
the
even
no
so, are we
decision,
gonna send buses out with 14 kids on them all fall?
Well, we don't know what's happening in September.
We could open up, St. Francis Eagle Lake schools and, have some satellite centers.
I just think it's premature to make.
And the reason why we're taking this to the board now is because we wanted to give time for the families who have plans to adjust accordingly. That was the only reason we're trying to make it. Usually your calendar is approved in February, which it was. Now we're in June, just trying to, and we're all frustrated, like Mr. Sibley, this COVID thing has us all scrambling, and it's not a comfortable place to be in, when where, for us, we're making decisions for a school district, but given the small pieces of things that we have from the department and the things from the state, we can only react to what they give us, which is scary.
So, I don't think it's fair for the students who are gonna be working potato harvest to be front-loaded so heavily, where previously they would have August to get ready to get
yeah.
work done for harvest. So you're giving them such a short amount of time to do a ton of work that everyone else is gonna have a bunch of time to do all that work. I don't think that's fair. And then you're asking all the other students, so teachers and everyone are gonna be expected to work during harvest break, correct? So no staff are gonna be allowed to take time off, only students?
The 2 weeks are just traded from September to the end of August.
So why don't those students still come to school then? Why do we have to do remote learning? Why are we closing school if, for harvest break, if 10 to 15% of the school population are the only ones leaving? Why are we doing remote learning? Why don't we still have school? Staff are still working.
We will.
We will.
We will.
We will.
But you said remote learning. Only the students who are taking harvest break are gonna do remote learning?
No.
Okay. So why are we shutting school down for remote learning for those 2 weeks?
We're not.
We're not.
We're not, then,
That's
so
not
the
the
school's
question.
gonna be shut down?
No one's shutting anything down.
So where does the remote learning piece come into this then, for those 2
The,
weeks?
the kids who are in harvest will have the opportunity to connect with their teachers remotely while harvesting, while in their harvest break, so that they can keep up with things. But again, the plan is to have those first 2 weeks of school to front load, the week back after harvest to remediate, so that they're not.
Plus, Ben, when
Basically
you,
just the extension that we had last year.
Here.
but besides that, don't you have like 50% of the kids that are gonna still have to be taught remotely?
We don't.
I mean, if you look at the size of the classrooms, and now you're limited to 10 kids in the classroom,
We don't.
but you've got 20 kids in a classroom typically.
Yeah.
Some of those kids are gonna have to be taught remotely.
We don't know.
Ben, have you gotten any feedback from any of the teachers on any of this?
So, two options. One is you stick with the original calendar, where you have 2 weeks of potato harvest guaranteed. People wanna do whatever they wanna do in that 2 weeks, work or do whatever, and the school starts in August. Other option is school starts in September, and only the kids that wanna work harvest do that. Either way, the farmers have their employees that they want. That's what your options are, you don't, it's not any different
Well,
than that.
there is a third option, and it's to table this vote until we know more. Right now, we just don't know enough.
What do you need to know?
It's like Gary just said, this is a fluid environment. We don't know what's gonna happen in 2 weeks, 4 weeks. There might be another surge, this might all go away. We might be all hunky-dory, go back to the original plan, see you later.
Can we all agree that harvest break is staying? Do we wanna make that something we're agreeing?
Well, it's
In
staying
either,
in a
in either
different
option, harvest break stays. In
Right.
either option.
I think the question, but we've raised the question before in prior meetings, and that the number of students who are actually doing harvest break is so small. I mean, we're providing more staff for owls, in some grades than we are for farmers.
Which, there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, but the thing is we can align ourselves with other districts, is what I'm saying. And if we can still make room for people to do harvest, we should. But we're moving the entire earth around this one thing. If we can make room for kids to do harvest, it doesn't hurt them, and we don't have to disalign from the rest of the state, because that's what we are, we're off by 2 weeks for the rest of the state. I mean, this is a discussion we have every year, should we continue to move our calendar around?
But don't you have to follow French drill and say the gas calendar?
Well, no, but I guess what I'm saying
But
is.
whatever, I mean, no matter what, those three, I don't know if they're all districts now, whatever it is, have to at the same time, right?
They do, I guess what I'm saying is, the question that Jake had asked is, are we still committed to harvest break? And I think what I'm saying is, maybe we don't have to be committed to what it used to look like. Maybe we can do this new thing and we don't have to choose whether or not to have harvest, because as the number of kids who work harvest goes down and down and down, and we see a trend, I've been on the board for 5 years and it's dropped every year. There's gonna be a day when we don't have many kids doing it. And I don't wanna just say, you know what, we're done, we're not gonna support the local farmers. I would rather have a trial run of, this is what it looks like when we do both at the same time. And now we've got an excuse, because everything's going to hell. We can try it and see if it works that way. If it doesn't work that way, we'll call this a trial run.
Talk to Presque Isle.
I don't wanna.
They
Yeah, but
tried.
it's a trial run for you
Didn't work
guys,
for them
but
at
if
all.
we're
No.
stuck without any students, what is it good to us?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's another, there's a balance there, cause
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure a lot of kids
So it didn't work in Prescott.
Not at all, we went back to the harvest break,
Sorry.
that's my point.
A couple of differences between our schools and Prescal. Prescal is not a proficiency-based school, so kids who missed assignments, they were given zeros, and that was it. You were told you could try to keep up with work in Prescal, but it wasn't what we have here. It wasn't built with remediation periods. It was simply go to harvest, keep up with your work, and hopefully you don't fall behind. A big difference between that, because I agree, those hours are not gonna be possible for kids to sit at a computer after they just got off the harvester for 12, 15 hours. It's not gonna be possible. The remote aspect of it is so that they can check their email, check their Google Classroom, make sure they see what's happening, but also continue to do the work that that they need to do for the farmers.
If it rains during harvest break, do they go to school, they attend school?
If school is in session, obviously, yes, they would.
I don't think that should be an expectation, though.
So basically, we're at the same point that we were, we have two options.
Mary, I think Tricia has something to say.
Yeah, I'd like to point out a few things. First, this meeting is happening when the farmers are in the field planting the very crop we're talking about. And they personally don't really have a say here because they can't be here. I just want to point that out. The other thing I want to point out is the whole reason harvest started all those years ago was because the farmers needed a workforce that they didn't have. So the high schoolers went to work. Well, while there's less high schoolers working on farms, our need for that workforce hasn't changed. And I'm not opposed to what you're talking about with remote learning. But in the past, and I've been doing this for a long time, in the past, students have been penalized if they chose to work harvest, both through the soccer, sports, and teachers. You know, like there's a subtle undertone that, oh, well, you chose to work harvest, you're gonna have to work really hard to get caught up. And I wouldn't want to go forward with that kind of culture.
That's fair.
And we can establish policy.
Well, establishing it and enforcing it and,
Right.
you know, it's two separate battles.
Which that Tricia led into what I was gonna ask about. We don't know what fall sports are gonna look like. So, if school's still in session those 2 weeks, just like she said, I mean, those kids are gonna be penalized. It's gonna be unattractive for them to wanna work on a farm if they know they're not gonna be playing soccer. I mean, I think the whole thing's premature. I mean, July, this could look totally different.
That comes to my point. I think that we should have another open discussion. This time here, we have a motion for discussion with the farmers here in July. And then we say, hey, do we start in August or do we start in September? Maybe we'll know more, maybe we won't know anymore. But I'm just saying that.
Can we just send out some sort of a notice to parents to remind them that we are in this situation where we have to be flexible and be able to react accordingly, depending on whatever happens with this COVID and, I think we need to remind people we gotta be flexible. And if we have to go back, stick to the original plan, the originally approved calendar, we do. If not, look at option B.
There was a letter that went out to the families today that basically said, you know, work with us because we're planning for unknowns. I will continue to do that throughout the summer just to keep people updated. We're doing the best that we can. It's not a comfortable place to be in when you don't have the answers.
For anybody.
Right, yeah.
I can also say that as an educator, that the remote distance learning has been an incredible challenge. But beyond the challenge, my biggest concern is that I can ask or assign, assignments and whatnot. It doesn't necessarily mean that those assignments that I get back or have been vetted or validated. We get some issues, and I'm hoping that when we have the professional days in the next 12 days or whatever, that we're going to try to figure as a faculty, how do we address the whole notion of giving a test and that the kids aren't cheating? How do we validate that they're even doing this stuff? There's a lot of stuff. These kids in terms of technology have it all over us. So they really have figured out the science of this, and they can manipulate like nobody's business. So even though I'm dealing with proficiency based, and I am known as a tough-ass teacher, and I've got assignments that I'm correcting, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's that kid's work. It could also be mom and dad's work. So we've got to be able to put into place some sort of system that validates. So in terms of tabling this idea, I would like for us to consider tabling it, I don't know about July, but at least till our next meeting. I think our next meeting is what?
The 15th.
The 15th there. I mean, I don't know, but I just think that we've got some stuff that as educators, that we have to figure out as well.
My concern is that, first of all, is if you do have harvest for 2 weeks, and everybody's off for 2 weeks, doing whatever they want to do, that's their choice, that's fine. My concern is the ones that choose to work in school still going on during harvest break, on how in the heck they're gonna catch up and follow with the rest of the class. That's my concern.
And that's gonna be a turnoff for them.
That's correct.
They won't want them to.
And that's why,
Yeah, of course, I mean, it's,
and that's why I've always and always will support 2 weeks of harvest break with a guaranteed week that it's gonna be at least on this week at some point in time. And the rest of the stuff needs to be discussed in detail with the community and the farmers, period. So,
I guess the question I'd have for you,
go
and
for it.
I guess I'm being devil's advocate, how few kids do we have to have in harvest before we start thinking about your ultimate, like, if we're drawing a line and saying we'll always have harvest, how many?
You're right, Toby.
Because I don't wanna get in a situation like I got the school in St. Francis, where we got 3 kids and we're still dragging our feet, like, we should keep the school open.
You're exactly right, but your point that you're making right now, guess what? We're not gonna be discussing tonight.
We need to have the discussion.
Well, that's right, we need to have it, but we're not gonna do
And
it
we need, but
tonight.
the thing is, we don't just have that discussion tonight. At some point, we have a discussion about how we continue to support the farmers when our numbers get down to 3 or 4
Mhm.
kids, 5 kids. How do
It's not
we,
there now, but anyway,
we're not terribly far.
well, we're surely gonna find out.
I mean, how many do we have last year, Ben, actually working in the,
Continue to discuss while I.
it's a low number, and I'd like to set them up so we don't get in a point where we're like, you know what, it's not worth it for 10 kids, and it's all people working for you guys. That would suck for the farmers who are here today, that would be terrible. I want a transition plan, so if this happens, we're not stuck. We're just calling it off
The
one day.
transition plan is very important that it happens.
Yeah,
Tonight is not the night that we're gonna decide the transition plan.
well, I guess what I would say is that what's being proposed tonight is a transition plan. Trial run.
I do not believe that the people that participate in this are here to
So
discuss this in detail.
if we're gonna throw out all kinds of stuff, maybe the answer could potentially be different for different schools. We don't have any elementary school kids that are working on harvest. If we're doing remote learning, maybe their school calendar doesn't have to be the same. And I
The
know-
reason why it's the same is because of budget.
and
Because
because
you're
of
busing
busing.
kids, you're busing kids,
Right.
and
we're all
you
learning
save X
remotely-
amount of money by busing, well, everybody's in school at the same time, because that's what happened, you have so many days that you have to go to school.
I
and
understand that,
if-
but what I'm saying is, if we're all remote, say we find out in July that it's 50 through December, and we're all remote, then maybe it's different for different schools. I'm just
Mhm.
throwing it out there as another consideration.
Yeah, I think we should table it. I think we should have more discussions like we keep talking about doing our retreat. And that's something. I mean, we've been talking about this for a long time, but I think it's a good discussion point for that, for us to have a plan, and we can look at better numbers and we can be more thoughtful around it.
47 students.
47.
And I would like to say, I think, Sarah, I see where you're going. If we're gonna, like, I think it's something we want to talk about in the future is if we're gonna, I think remote learning may be here to stay regardless of what happens with COVID. That's the reality of it. I mean, if we have an economic downturn because of this, which is possible, it may just be fiscally responsible to have less on-site learning.
But I think you were surprised at 47 people that were in Harvest, not 10, 15. But anyway, I think if we.
Well, I said 10, 15 per class, but that was.
Okay, right.
I overestimated actually, Gary, by
No,
considerable
okay.
amount.
The thing is if we do table this, we table it using what we already agreed to. Right? Calendar we already agreed to.
Oh, yeah, you have an adopted calendar.
That's right.
So,
So-
there's a motion, let's do this procedurally. There's a motion on the table in a second. Do you want, Keith, you made the motion, do you want to proceed on the motion, or do you want to withdraw the motion?
Well, we would need to take a vote on the original motion, right?
Well, if you withdraw it, you don't have to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
unless you withdraw it, then we
Well,
just,
that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna withdraw the motion.
Okay.
now we need another motion.
I'll move to table it till July.
Second.
Or is it June or July?
Well, we have a meeting in June, but it's on the 15th, and that's.
Is that after Frenchville meets?
But you were thinking that the Department of Education might have something in July.
July, okay.
Maybe.
They're not gonna have anything about harvest break.
But they would have something about September.
No, they'll have something on guidance for restarting school.
Oh, okay.
Well, I just think it's crazy that more people can go inside of Lowe's at one time than can come to school. Makes no sense.
It's ridiculous.
We can't change any of that stuff.
So, basically, you did make a motion, right, Toby?
I made a motion to move this to the tables to July.
And second by Gary. Or,
Both, I think they said together.
all right, one of them seconded. So is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Very good. Hey, agree. Nothing changes. And in July, if you have any notes, or if you have a small army you want to bring. So, and good luck, I hope everything grows.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You sure you want to stay?
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks, teacher. Okay.
So, just, the link isn't working. The link isn't working.
Matt?
Just so you know. I typed it in, I got nothing.
Are you getting emails? I'm not.
You sure it's your phone you got?
No, I'm telling you. And my wife wanted to give me what she got, and I wouldn't take it. I called Ben and said it.
How about now?
It's okay.
Something's wrong
What I'm
here.
getting,
Which link are you talking about? Which link?
the one on this, https, bit.ly/878 board meeting, capital B, capital M.
What, that retreat?
Sometimes I want to retreat from everything. Raise a white flag and leave.
My two boys went to daycare this week, so it's nice.
Wow.
Yeah, get some stuff done.
Ooh, the next thing is the subcommittee meeting. And you gonna get that to work?
Who's up? Okay.
Okay. Subcommittee meeting at the DOE. The subcommittee members were
You had Toby, Gary, and Sarah. That we went down on March 12th and had a meeting with the commissioner, the deputy commissioner, and Scott Brown. I think that was it for the department. Yeah. So I'll leave it to the committee to talk about what was discussed.
Before we go to that, I was just looking at the, thing. We're gonna do the budget thing at the end?
Can we get some context too? Of the meeting, the DOE meeting.
Earth.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anytime, dude. So we went down right before all hell broke loose. I think it was the Thursday before, everything shut down.
Day of the first case in Maine.
Yeah. We went down because we had proposed some questions to, we had posed some questions to the commissioner on the regionalization, some questions generally about Valley Unified, how it's gonna operate, what we need to do going forward, but also some questions about the site-specific issues and where we were gonna go. I think there was even something about like where we would go with, in the face of how the vote turned out. I think that was one of the issues that was kind of on the table at the time. I know it feels like 8 years ago, but it was only 3 months. So we met with her. The meeting went really well. She was there. There was a nice fellow there who's, I think, deputy commissioner. And there was Scott Brown showed up halfway through. We looked at that formational chart that we keep seeing with like 25 steps and 8 levels on each step. We looked through all that, and the discussion was about questions we had about process, because you had a question, Jake, I remember one of the questions we brought was one of yours, which is, do we have the freedom to move something within the process? Can we move a thing that's step 4 to step 2 if we think it's gonna help us figure out step 3? That was one of the questions we asked. Generally speaking, I got the sense that the commissioner's like, it's all about local control, but Scott came in and said that there are certain things that need to be where they are, depending on the statute. Okay, and the commissioner backed that up. If it's in the statute, it has to go in the order the statute says it has to be in. We didn't get into specifics because we only met for like an hour. What was interesting though is basically, if there's anything that's not in the statute, it's up to the local to control. The DOE does not take a position on these things. It's not their job to make decisions. She kind of took this position that it's up to the locals to decide what we're gonna do throughout this process. If we don't like something, we need to say something. Don't wait for DOE to come in and say you can't do that. We come in and say we don't want this, or we do want this. It was pretty empowering. She kept saying it. I think she said it probably a dozen times. It's up to you to decide. The other thing that was interesting was that, she actually raised an example of if your vote comes down to 49 to 51, it's up to you to decide whether or not that's a passing vote, or 50-50. It's up to the board. So we were always struggling with what does it mean. Like SAD 27 came out with this like 50-50 split for site selection. And ultimately, what I took from what she was saying was, it's up to your board to decide what that means for you.
The referendum vote.
Yeah.
Straw poll. Thank you.
So she kept going back to that, like if you don't like something, it's up to you to fix it. There was another thing she talked about a lot, and that was the RSU. That basically this project is not moving until an RSU is formed. It doesn't have to be fully formed. If all 3 boards vote on an RSU, to form an RSU, that's enough, in her opinion, to take the next step, to go to phase 2. Until then, everything's kind of locked up until 27, 33, and Madawaska each agree that on how we're gonna form the RSU. It's not just enough to say, yeah, we think it's a good idea. Like, we need a little bit more put together so that way they know that there's somebody managing as a fiscal agent, and there's somebody managing this process. There's a governmental body that can receive the money and do stuff with it. I think she said that 20 times in the meeting. We kept going back to that. Just an observation, she seemed really surprised that we in Valley Unified chose to give up, the majority. She's like, I thought that was really strange, that you're paying 51% and you're only taking 33% of the vote. She said that when she first saw that, she thought that was very curious, and that, you know, basically that's not, it was just unusual for her. And one thing that when we talked about was that even if we choose to get an RSU, like if we're gonna be meeting next week to do this think tank thing, to talk about what we need to go into an RSU, basically what our ideas are, what we're willing to work with. Even if we form an RSU, even if we decide to form an RSU, it has no retroactive effect on Valley Unified. So it's not like if we decide next week we're gonna form an RSU and we all come together on the 14th next time we meet and we all agree that this is what we're gonna do, that RSU doesn't actually form until much later. It's kind of in a limbo existence of non-formation until a school is built, in all likelihood. And until then, it's Valley Unified that's gonna dictate what we do and don't do. So it's gonna be the same governmental structure we have now. So even if we decide to get an RSU, and in the RSU, I think there needs to be, I think according to the statute, there needs to be proportional voting. Even if we have that, we don't get that until the school is built and we've moved on to the next phase with the RSU. So even if we agreed an RSU currently under Valley Unified, we'll still follow the same 33% under Valley Unified. We're stuck with that until an RSU is formed. So that could potentially leave us in a situation where we go a long time before we get vote commensurate with our population or expense, either way or both. So that's how we're gonna, I think that's what we're looking at. Let me see if there's anything else I wrote to myself here. That's what I got. You guys were there. There?
I had three things that really struck me. One was how she kept coming back to it's a local thing. It's a local thing that you decide that locally. The fact that she specifically called out, it was pretty strange to do the 50% of the cost and 33% of the vote. The other thing that she noted that I remembered was that she had granted us this meeting simply because we asked. I think she was kind of concerned about how that might seem, and so we talked about at the meeting either having some notes or something, and she didn't really want to do that, but she said she was more than happy to come up and meet with the 3 school boards or the Valley Unified or whoever, so that kind of everybody can get on the same page. But then COVID hit, and that's kind of put a pause on anything, but it seemed like she was willing to come help, relay all that information that we gained on the meeting with everybody else.
And there was one more piece that I forgot about, that we talked about the outlying towns.
Oh, yeah.
About Winterville and Allagash and Eagle Lake and Grand Isle, yeah. And that if they wanted to come in on the RSU level, when we create the RSU, if we want to invite them, we can. Like, there's nothing prohibiting them to come to the RSU. Under Valley Unified, it's a little harder because the way the Valley Unified interlocal agreement is written, it's difficult to get anybody in there. But the RSU kind of allows us, if we wanted to, and I think we should at least extend an olive branch at some point to Eagle Lake, Winterville, Grand Isle, and when I grew up next to I think that we could do that as part of the RSU, and I think as a board, this board, it's something we need to have a discussion about whether or not that's something that, and if we do it, what it's gonna look like.
I think probably the most concerning thing out of the whole meeting was how she kept going back to local control, local decisions. That was your local decision. You should have made that on a local decision. That's not something the Department of Education is gonna tell you what to do. Right down to, like we'd asked about several times through the whole process, the additional cost per site, if that could be part of the matrix and site selection. It could have been, if we wanted it to be, but we were always led to believe that, no, this is this, WBRC isn't gonna tell us this because that comes in site, concept design, whatever. Right up to the straw poll, how the public was informed and was under the assumption that if we vote no on this, this kills the whole school project. That wasn't true, not at all. She was surprised to hear that, wanted to know, where did you hear that? I mean, that's what we heard all along. So now we've got a situation where we've put out to the public that if you vote no on this, the school is dead. Well, the school is not gonna be dead. So we have an inaccurate,
So what you're saying, Gary, is the DOE never reviewed the results of a straw poll or our site that we selected and how that all went down? Because if I'm not mistaken, I thought in the statute it said that that was part of their responsibility.
It hasn't got that far yet,
Okay, so we haven't got to that step yet.
no, because everything's on standstill.
Right.
But
Okay.
ultimately, it's up to us to decide what happens with it. It's not, we're not waiting for DOE's blessing. As long as we follow a process, DOE doesn't care.
One thing the commissioner did say as well is that it's a local control, but remember, your local is a regional project. So it's not local specific to this board, it's regional, local. So,
right, but all the things we were led to believe were very rigid and directed by the state was not so.
the statutes.
We had a lot more ability to make decisions on how that whole process went. And so now we've told people, vote no, the school's dead. That's not the case. So we have a very skewed vote because SAD's 27th vote, I'm almost 110% sure would look a lot different had it not been put out there that way. So what do we do with that?
Well, and one thing she did say that was interesting is, I know there's local control, but one thing she said was, in reference to the 49-51% thing, she says that's a community decision, and then she said, that's your school board's decision. Like, that was put specifically on the school board in the meeting, and I thought that was interesting, because it was our district that made the decision, right? It was SUD 27 that split 50-50. And she was like, I mean, what I got from that was that it's up to us to decide what that means for us as a community.
Are you saying, Toby, then that the 49-51 decision that we made as a board,
Well, we need a 50-50, but
should have gone out to the community to make that decision?
not to this board to decide what to do with it.
It would have to be the board.
Once you have the results, the board decides.
Well, because we were waiting to hear from the DOE to say what they would say, like, you know, the question was, what happens when we get this?
Yeah.
And we were like, well, we'll see what the DOE says. Well, the DOE's saying, it's not up to us, it's up to you to decide what that means for your district.
Yeah.
What does a 50-50 split mean for your district?
Oh, I think we voted at Valley Unified, what we thought it meant anyway.
Yeah, but I don't think we've dealt with it here in this board, like what that means for us. And I don't know, it changed the way I thought about this. Like, I thought we were at the whim of the department, but we're not. I mean, we get to decide what this means for us.
So what you're saying is that straw poll, where it was 50-50 SCD 27, your sense is that we should have had a board meeting to discuss what that meant, the ramifications of that vote and what it meant for us as a district.
Yeah, and she said what things mean, and it's up to us to decide what that means.
And the thing is that we thought it was up to them.
Yeah, we mistakenly, but she was pretty clear that it's not their decision, it's our decision. Yeah, so it was a pity that everything went to hell in the world after we had the meeting, because it's kind of weird to meet 3 months after. But I think in light, I mean, nothing's moving right now, because everything's kind of, I'm assuming, on ice. We're meeting with the RSU folks next week, Gary? The 6th, something, 9th?
9th.
Is that open to the public? Or?
I don't even know. What kind of meeting is that then? Is that just an informal sit-down chat? So that's just a chat.
So, as a board, moving forward, do we continue being 1/3 partner, or are we a 51% partner?
In the RSU?
Yeah.
I can't see, the state won't let, you can't by statute tie yourself up the way we did in Valley Unified. It's illegal.
So one person, one vote.
One person, one vote, starts
So,
you.
I-
But not, it doesn't change Valley Unified's for governmental structure.
No, but if we're moving forward to having an RSU structure, and it's gonna be proportional voting, correct?
Yeah.
And it makes Valley Unified complicated.
You get the understatement badge tonight.
You just have to remember that Valley Unified will only govern your shared services. That's the only thing. It won't govern a new school, it won't govern any of that. It'll just govern your superintendent services, your shared services, that's all it will govern.
But it's governing the process in which
Precisely.
this
Everything.
project,
Project.
Right, because the project was awarded to Valley Unified.
right,
So it's a kind of a big deal.
so it is a big deal.
And it's not a small financial thing either. I mean, Valley Unified has, much of our administration has shifted to Valley Unified. And we've got you, we've got Zell, Peter, Lucy. Oh, who?
Melanie.
Sharon,
Melanie.
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 So, how do we get to the point to get our 51%?
We have to ask.
You have to get it in the RSU formation.
We can't wait for the RSU. I don't think we should
Oh,
wait.
you mean, okay.
Because we're gonna be in limbo. Once again, we're gonna be in a situation where we are paying 51% of the bill, but we're getting 33% of the vote between now and when the school doors open. So when it comes to concept design, we'll have a minority stake. When it comes to bonding, we'll have a minority stake. When it comes to everything, we're gonna have a minority stake.
So we have an option not to participate.
Well, I think we need to go to Valley Unified and explain to them that we want a share proportionate.
Or nothing.
Well, we'll ask for a share proportionate. I'm not ready to start threatening.
Well,
I think it's only fair.
I saved that for the second date.
I think it's only fair to our constituents, like the people we represent. I think it's, after hearing this, I think that's the only fair way to move forward.
which way is that, Jay?
The proportionate voting
Yes.
At Valley Unified.
at Valley Unified.
Yep.
I don't think any decision we make at that board is, like, I feel like we have to be proportionate voting.
Can this board recommend to the Valley Unified members from this board on how to act?
Of course.
Well, there's a split on that. We actually asked the lawyer that question. And there's a split in authority. It's not really clear.
Well, until it's clear, why don't we just go our own way?
Well, that's one option. I like how you think. But we're not having a Valley Unified board meeting anytime soon. We're doing this think tank, Gary and I think that's an appropriate time to have a discussion.
Yeah.
Because it's informal and we can talk.
Haven't won any votes there yet?
Well, there's no voting that's gonna happen. There's just gonna be a discussion.
But I think what you have to keep in mind is when Valley Unified was first formed, there was not yet talk about a new school. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't think that's the
There was
case.
not. And if there would have been, if Valley Unified would have been created with the intent of grades 7 to 12 becoming part of a new school unit, we would never have signed on to be only a third of the vote on that board. It would not have happened. But at that point, it was in its infancy. We were talking about sharing a superintendent, sharing adult ed. Okay, you scratch our back, we'll scratch yours. We're doing it with the tech center. Yeah, let's go
That all
for it.
came about at the time of the application process that we were putting in for the grant.
Okay.
And it also, I can remember sitting in the band room
Mhm.
upstairs. We conceded to the 33 because you know it's gonna end up in Fort Kent, the school. So the school was part of the mindset. We didn't form the service center just out of,
Oh, we didn't know at the time. Originally, it was gonna be 9 to 12, and we didn't know where we stood as far as qualifying.
but we knew the intent behind forming Valley Unified was for the school through the application of the grant process.
Because I remember that being part of the conversation too. I mean, we saw it on the horizon, it was something we knew about was coming, and we were trying to anticipate, and I remember the conversation was basically, according to the criteria, it doesn't make any sense, like, there's no way we can't get this, the school's gonna have to be here because of distance and all these things, so the least we can do is offer them this as an olive branch to come in. And I remember we had a disagreement, and that's where we ended up with the 7/9 thing. Because originally there was no 7/9 component. The 7/9 came in as a, because I was uncomfortable, and John Martin was uncomfortable with the original interlocal agreement because it was just a simple majority, where we were gonna get rolled over if we were only a third. If the other two partners decided that they were going to just run with anything, we were gonna get rolled over. So we introduced the language for 7/9, so as to provide some insurance for us, so that at least we could, they would have to have at least one of our cohort vote with them in order for something to move. So one person from every town needed to, you couldn't have two towns, whether it be our town, Madawaska, or Frenchville, Santa Guy, nobody was gonna get run over unless at least one of their members came forward and said, you know what, we agree. Okay. So that was the conceit, that we thought that would work. That's what I remember. You around there, Gary?
And the whole Valley Unified thing was to make it look better on the grant, that, look, you guys are already doing this, we've taken these steps, and
We had used our St. John Valley Tech Board as kind of like a framework. And that works with, you know, equal membership, so that was used as well.
Mhm. Yeah, it was clearly the template,
Right.
was that, which, in hindsight, you know, but here we are. So that was the meeting with the commission. Curry, you've been quiet. Anything to say?
No, I'm just listening.
Okay. You're not gonna yell at me?
You know,
Curtis.
I mean, but I remember that meeting, and John had forewarned us at that meeting.
Yep.
You know, he said, man, be
Surely
careful.
made mistakes along the way. What do you think?
Well, I think Gary and I are meeting with the think tank, and I think if you guys are okay with that, grant us the latitude to kind of talk about this other stuff. I mean, ultimately, nothing moves unless we join an RSU, right?
Who's on that committee? Besides the two of you?
Who's the two of us?
Joe's more than just.
Oh, we're gonna do great. Should last long.
Oh, that's
Gary and I are gonna wrestle in the parking lot. Whoever wins gets it. I think he's got it. No, it's who is it?
In 33, it's Lana, and it's Josh.
Okay.
And in Madawaska, it's Tammy.
Tammy?
And Lou Dugal.
So,
We're not making any agenda, we're just gonna go have a discussion to start.
Do you want, what else do you want to talk about? Just proportionate voting and.
I think that's a start. I mean, there's nothing official happening in that meeting. I think we're just throwing ideas out there.
Okay.
You want the backing of this board for progression, for proportionate vote? Do you want to know if every member really wants a proportionate vote from this board?
But this is for the formation of an RSU, right?
Well, yeah, but
This
I
thing-
think it's something we need to talk about. I mean, there's no point entering into an RSU if they're not willing to talk to us about proportionate voting.
Right, but the intent of the think tank is to form an RSU or for?
To talk about what we need to get an RSU.
Okay, gotcha.
And I like your statement. There's no sense in talking about it unless we have a proportionate vote. It's a waste of time.
Yep, I agree.
Because that means we're in a marriage of, an uncomfortable marriage until the school's built, and we have no say until the school goes up.
Now, Toby, is there not a way for Valley Unified to possibly come to an arrangement where they amend the existing agreement to incorporate some of those elements of an RSU into it itself?
No.
7/9, right?
No. He's asking a different question. The commissioner was absolutely 100% clear. It's an RSU or it's nothing.
Okay.
Actually, no, she gave us three options. Hold on. First option. Give me a second. I wrote them down.
form a new RSU, all join the current SAU,
Yes.
or change RSU language and statute.
Because there's two RSU options there, because the first RSU option is we form what's now would be a traditional RSU, which would be pre-K through 12 for the whole valley. So if you're in Allagash, or you're in Grand Isle, or Winterville, and those are all tuitioning schools, but still, you get it.
Yeah.
You're gonna be governed by RSU number 77, okay, whatever we are. And we're run by an RSU board that's made up of constituents from all of the all the participating communities. Second option is we all join SAD 33. And we find a way to govern SAD 33 under a bigger SAD. I'm giving you that as an example so I don't set anybody's hair on fire. The third option, because it's in the middle.
You're being nice now, though.
So, and the third option is we form this hybrid. And the commissioners seem to think it was possible to do it now, the AG says no. And the hybrid would be, we all keep our SADs until, the kids stay as an SAD, my kids, your kids are in the SAD until they reach grade 7. And then they move over into an RSU. Current RSU language says that you need to be the RSU needs to provide for kids from pre-K to 12. They're talking about amending the language of the RSU statute to say an RSU can be any grade level. So we can start midstream. So we would have local control over SAD 27 kids, 33 would have 33 kids, Madawaska would have Madawaska kids, and then once you hit 7th grade, boom, there's a separate board that governs how they do things separate from those three. So we basically act almost like quasi-tuitioning entities, but we would have a vote, because we, in the global RSU, on our high school kids programming, which I thought that was a really good idea at first, but the more I think about it, the more uncomfortable I am with it, because it feels like, because we're gonna have two boards.
Right.
For governing.
So
schools.
if we form an RSU, we would thus eliminate, let's say it was a pre-K to 12 RSU, we would be basically eliminating our local boards.
SAD 27 would stop existing.
Okay. Because I'm drawing from our experiences being part of an AOS, where we had two boards. We continued to have our local board, and we also had our AOS board. And it was basically a huge duplication of everything. And that's why we eliminated it. So it sounds like the RSU is the best option.
With the
Personally, I
RSU,
think pre-K to 12 is.
No, Valley Unified would continue to act as a way of sharing stuff, as like in a parallel universe. That's what she didn't use that term, I just like that one. But parallel to the new RSU, Valley Unified would continue to act as like an aggregator of services and a purchaser of services. But I'd imagine if once the RSU is built, if we decide we want to eliminate, we could. I mean, Valley Unified, if it became duplicative, I don't see why we couldn't, because Valley Unified allows us to change Valley Unified's rules at any time.
We get money for being in a regional service center or an
Okay.
education service center that we probably wouldn't want to turn down. So my salary, 55%, that's only because we're part of an education service center. So even if we just have an annual meeting to just do whatever, and I mean, I don't think the future of Valley Unified is gonna have a whole lot of teeth. Once all this is ironed out, and we have a school and it's built and we're happy and we march off into the sunset. But until then, it's gonna have to be yucky. There was some discussion about, RSU, pre-K to 12 RSU. Just keep in mind that some of the other communities are one of the conditions of forming this regional service center was that one community did not have control to close down another community's school, especially at the elementary level. So it would be kind of scary for some communities to form one combined RSU, because they realize at that point, voters in town A have a say in the school in town B, and that's kind of scary for folks.
I'm sorry, it's kind of scary for us to have a third vote and
Right.
send the bill.
Right.
So I get it, but.
So that's why the alternate language for a 7 through 12, where you just share that one school that you're all planning on sharing, was put out.
I think we could put safeguards in. I mean, it's something Keith and I have talked about with, St. Francis. If I could go back in time, I wasn't on the board when St. Francis closed, but Like, I think if we could've gone back 15 years and said, when our student count drops below X, we all agree that that's the drop dead date.
And
Like,
that's the problem, that was never done.
but I think if we were to form a regional RSU and we had a discussion with all the communities, like, as long as you can keep your school numbers up to X per class, we'll all agree that we're not gonna even talk about touching it.
They have those standards in Canada, in New Brunswick.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened. Once you get down to a certain point, you're part of a different school district.
Well, I think what happened
Without
with,
discussion.
with us is the reason we had so much acrimony around closing the school was because of the schools, was because we didn't know when it was gonna happen. So every year it's like, oh, one more year we'll make it, one more year we'll make it. But I think if we were to do something global, I mean, we could offer some level of protection if we just agreed that as long as the school had so many kids in it.
I wish that the Department of Education would tell us if they still have money for a new school or not.
Jesus, Barry.
You know, I mean,
You and Gary need to go talk about world events.
No,
And then come back in and do a meeting
I'm
with
just
us.
saying that, you know, because, you know, that we're gonna be in the world hurt here for a number of
I was
years.
thinking a lot about our policy in Afghanistan, and I don't know.
But I don't think that there's gonna be funds for a new school.
Well, we're gonna proceed as if there is. I think we should.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but somebody needs to tell us if there is.
When I've been told that we don't.
Remember we asked questions back in November of the DOE?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, we still didn't get an answer.
So there. We'll find out what we find out. Maybe they'll tell us when we're older.
Okay, so,
Can
Should
you
we
send
move
us-
on?
Can you send us a summary after that meeting?
Well, we're gonna be meeting a week later.
15th is the next meeting.
Oh, that's right around the corner.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And
Is
it
that on
works
the
a lot
agenda?
better with you here than on the TV screen.
You know what the secret is?
What?
I have them come over to my house for supper
When?
tonight, and I drove them here.
Way to go, Toby.
It might be to the car,
I even made him sit down next to me and buckled him in.
What kind of seat?
Buckets.
Okay, ready for the next topic?
Absolutely.
Budget.
Budget. Your final look at the budget, we are hoping, and the reason this was not on the agenda, was because we were going to review it one final time on the 15th. However, given the executive order that went through today, allowing us to go directly to referendum vote with the budget and bypassing the town meeting aspect of budget, if we're going to hit our deadline to be on the July 14 primary election date, we need the 30-day notice thing, so we essentially have to have this approved before June 15 so that we can hit all those markers. So Lucy's going to talk you through this. I think it's going to be very similar to what you heard last week, but I'll let Lucy explain.
Yep, I gave you 4 or 5 sheets, and the first one has a big A on the top. I made very few changes from the last time, and the changes that I made do not affect the bottom line. We're still going in with a decrease, an overall decrease to the local taxpayers. When I started going through the process and getting ready for the warrants and whatnot, it occurred to me that now that we have the summer meal program approved, when we approve a budget through the warrants at the budget hearing, we have articles that approve the expenditure, and then we have the article that approves how to collect money. But by having an extended summer meal program, I have extra expenses that I need to have approved to be able to spend. I know we'll get money for it, but I need the approval on the expenditure side as well. So on the big sheet of A, the only amount that changed is in the school lunch program, and I added a value, because there's a big unknown. It may not be just for summer, it may be during harvest break, it may be extended through Christmas, just the same as what we did for April break, is that we served meals even when school was out of session. So what I plan for is an extra 12 weeks of summer meals. In the event that we need to do so, we'll be able to pay the people who are actually working the summer meal program. Turn around, all the meals that we serve, we get to collect from the state of Maine, and the two will offset each other. So I've got the expense, on the expense side, I've included an extra 170,613. And on sheet C, I've included the revenue of 170,613 coming from the state of Maine, the nutrition portion of it. So that the expense is there in the event that we need to spend it, but we also anticipate that we will recover everything that we spend.
Have we received any assurances from the state?
We
that
have
they're-
not, but I have to plan as if we may, and if we don't have any assurances, we're not gonna spend the money.
Right.
Really is what it boils down to. We're not spending what we're not collecting. But I need to have room on the expense side in the event that we do have to proceed and provide meals for children in the community. So that's the only change on the expense side, is the addition of those expenses. Summary B shows where that summer meal, so there's salaries in there, there's the benefits, the FICA and Social Security portion that belongs to it. And then I added food and consumables, so the products that we need to serve and to package and deliver these meals. So a total of 176,13.
So 74,000 in salary?
Yes,
that is?
roughly, yeah. Yeah, there's, when you sit and figure how many people it takes, we're actually counting on a reduced number of people, because we anticipate that in the summer months and in the breaks, we'll actually have fewer meals that we're currently having now. Now, everybody's participating. The teachers and all the kids that are used to having meals are participating. In the summer, as people take vacations and whatnot, we do anticipate that some of these will drop.
And we do have a survey that's going on to kind of gauge which families are not going to continue, so we're collecting that data right now.
Because right now, in SAD 27 alone, we have over 32 people that are working with our kitchen staff on preparing and delivering the meals, and that's just in one district. So that every day, when you come in to prepare the meals, because I mean, you've got a finite amount of time to get these meals ready and packaged and out the door. So it takes a lot of people, so I factored them in. The C document is showing the changes that I made. I've increased the cash balance a bit because when we look at the continuing ed program, some of the continuing ed programs that were slotted to happen this spring did not happen. So there'll be a little bit of a carry forward that we can apply there, and we've actually reduced the local share for continuing ed because of this. And then at the very bottom, you've got the summer lunch revenues that are there to offset. So the total local taxes that I presented last a week ago, 4,258,933, is a decrease of 34,000 to the local share as compared to last year. And the very last sheet is showing what that means for each town. So it would be a decrease of about 40,000 to Fort Kent, a slight increase to New Canada, and the difference there is because the valuations change from year to year, so the proportion amongst the towns themselves as 100% shifted a little bit. It's 1% increase to New Canada, 1.5% increase to St. Francis, 0.3% increase to St. John Plantation, and a decrease of 0.3% to Wallagrass. So overall, it's a decrease of 34,000 to the town, which is about a 1% decrease, just under 1% decrease. The change in mill rate just shows that because you're applying it to different valuation years, it's just showing a different mill rate. If we were applying it to the same year, you would have a decrease in mill rate. And then your very last sheet is showing where we are at with over or under EPS. We're about almost exact same number as last year. I think there's only about $3,000 or $4,000 difference, and we're at 11.8% EPS, which is very, very good as compared to the majority of school districts in Maine.
This budget includes the new elementary curriculum for ELA. This budget includes the restorative practice person for the middle high school that John and Steve had come to ask you about. This also includes, or brings back a library aide for Fort Kent Elementary that's going to also spend half the time in B wing, helping with literacy. So it does add some things back in that we weren't able to do last year, and that's just because we know those are really important for our schools.
So, I know somebody asked, and I don't remember the answer, and I'm sorry. When do we find out what our portion of the tech center is?
There will be no additional
There's no
costs this year. We approved it yesterday, and their ED 279 has increased somewhat from the prior year. So we're able to form a budget that lives within the ED 279 that was provided to the CTE Center. So there's no additional cost share. We no longer have it in our budget.
Oh, wow.
Remember, they have their own ED 279.
Oh, I know that, but
Yep.
I thought we'd have to pay a portion
We
based
did not,
on
no.
it. So it's not gonna cost us anything,
It won't cost us anything.
it's coming right through the state. Okay, good.
Yeah.
I had a question from last week. I looked at stuff and I remember Giselle applied for a grant for the front entryway, I think of the elementary school.
Yeah.
And I seem to recall, because it was something I've heard about before, that a certain portion of that was going towards some curtains in B-Wing.
Right,
And I see those have been removed from the budget.
right.
I thought those were paid for by grant.
No, so when we got approval of the renovating loan fund, I think originally, Giselle, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think originally it was approved, and then they came back and said, we cannot approve the curtains. So it was.
They actually removed it from the get-go as they approved it. We had not caught it, but then they sent us an email and said, by the way, did you notice that the curtains were removed?
Yeah. So right now, what we're doing, Toby, is we're looking at our balance forward and we're seeing if we can fund it at the end of this year, because it's only that section of school left to do. So Robbie keeps asking.
Those are original.
Yeah, Robbie keeps asking, and
Yeah,
They
1968.
match the floor tiles.
Lives in St. Francis, no?
They're probably in better shape.
Robbie keeps asking, and Lucy and I are monitoring to make sure that we can do that. It pains us to make Mr. Netto happy, but it looks like we may have to make him happy.
Don't get too happy. Normally by this time of year, I have a really good feeling of where we're going to end up. This year I don't, because there's the COVID-19, as fun as that has been, it hasn't helped my crystal ball in any way, shape, or form. I'm still not sure what we can claim from our tuition towns. We had planned on providing transportation for the kids to attend school from March until June. I don't know what I can claim from them. We've delivered meals, but we haven't traveled as much as usual. So I have not only do I have yes, I have a savings in transportation, but I also have a decrease in anticipated revenues that we really don't know. We can invoice them for all the tuition because the kids did finish school. That we fulfilled our teaching piece of it. But the other pieces, such as transportation and other services that may not have been able to do, like physical therapy, occupational therapy, those kinds of services, I have to kind of get a gauge on what we can invoice other towns. So my crystal ball is,
Correct.
I polish it every morning, but it's not working.
Is that why, so for next year, you've got student transportation, 18% increase, is that because we don't know what we're getting reimbursed for this year, or?
No, actually, the big increase in transportation is because of the bus. It's a different bus, it's not a regular bus, it's a special needs bus with a lift.
The other question I had was the textbooks. The high school, middle school science and high school math textbooks.
We actually paid them in May and June. So we've paid them. We were anticipating a 3-year phase, and that was year 2, or we did, there was 3 payments. We actually paid them off so that we will have them. They were an important part of remote learning. So we actually paid them all, so we have them. So we removed them from next year's budget, but we had them.
Because we paid them this year?
We paid them this year.
Okay, so they're removed from the budget, but they're gonna be there.
They have
The
them right now.
textbooks, we have them now.
Not gonna get sassed by a principal next year. Thrown under the bus and told your board doesn't value this.
Cut it from the budget.
Mr. Coletta, you have your science textbooks for middle school?
You must be.
Actually not. I
I'm glad I asked.
Lucy says you do.
You do, or you will before you do.
thought we do.
You're getting them, yes.
Yeah, it's.
Surprise, Mr. Coletta.
Yay!
Mr. Anderson and Ms. DeVoe will be very happy.
Yes. That was funny.
I'm talking about the high school ones, but we'll chat.
So high school, so just to be clear, middle school science and high school math textbooks were all set. They're in there. We've
The
got them.
math ones for sure.
Yeah.
But we don't know about middle school science.
We'll double check. I thought we were on the same page.
Like I said, I don't wanna have to talk to a principal next year.
No, we're good.
What happens if the state doesn't cough up their portion?
The same thing that happens every time that is brought up is we figure it out at that time. I can't plan on a reduced budget in the anticipating that the state will not, because the funds that I have today is what I have to plan on.
Yep.
And I have to plan on it as if we're gonna start school in August, and I have to plan as if we're gonna be in school.
No, I understand that part. I'm just, who makes the decisions if you have to make decisions if we lose 10% of our funding? Like what?
At that point in time, we go into a budget freeze and we monitor everything very closely.
Okay.
Obviously payroll has to continue, but we look at, not ordering those things, not funding those trips. We just have to tighten our belt. Similar to what you do with your family, if you lose some source of income, you'd have to look at cutting Netflix or,
But procedurally, is it the board that makes the decision, or is it the administrator alone?
as far as.
Like, let's say we come up $400,000 short from the state's contribution.
Right.
Do we reconvene as a board and say, oh my God, we gotta fix this? Or do you take care of it and we just?
We take care of it so much as though we can honor all of our contracts, all of our obligations. In the event that we're cut so badly that we can't do those things, we would come back to this board to make.
What normally happens in the past, if it does happen, is that they come up with a plan, the team, or Ben comes up with a plan, and then tells the board, this is what we think and how we have to make the cuts and where.
But we're involved in that plan.
Ultimately, yes.
Yeah,
When
unless
does
unless
the
it's
state usually
just
get
tighten
that
your belt.
information?
Yes.
It could be whenever.
Last minute.
Last minute, yeah.
They don't tell us well ahead of time. They are more, they're kind of letting us know ahead of time, this may be coming, this may be coming. But right now, they're not.
A big piece of it's gonna be based on their revenue forecast when they do that. I believe it's gonna be August to September, when they do that revenue forecasting based on how they did over the summer. That's gonna be very telling, for the state.
I heard that, you're really only gonna know how bad or good it is in September.
Yeah.
And that's whenever they're gonna tell you it's gloom or doom, or maybe
Not in
it's
time
not
for
that
the
bad.
budget, unfortunately. But we have to plan as if the money will be there and that we have to provide education services to all the kids.
I'm asking because I don't know. What happens if, what's the deadline for us having a budget?
Giselle can talk about, years in Madawaska that they didn't have a budget for months and months. You operate under your last adopted budget, which is last year's budget, month to month until you approve a budget. That's kind of a scary place to be in because, every school district in the state is in the same boat right now. And I think the DOE understands that, I think the state understands that, and I think to some extent, I hope that, even the federal government recognizes that, and they're gonna have to use some of these funds to make sure that schools continue to operate as best they can, and, it's just, you can't cut everything and then say, well, good luck. We're gonna need our own our own relief, you know, at some point if that happens.
How much of this budget were raises?
I don't have.
I'm just curious. I don't remember seeing that. I couldn't hear you guys well at the last budget meeting.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think what we decided was, we can talk about this out of executive session yet. Yes, what we're doing with the teachers?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Mhm.
Maybe you can, I don't think you could, nobody could hear anything in the last meeting.
Yeah.
Maybe you can explain what the teachers
So-
did. The teachers were actually awesome to us.
Yeah, what the proposal was to the teacher union, and we have entered an MOU, so we do have a memorandum of understanding with them, that they will receive, we're tabling, negotiations on this year's contract. We're gonna just extend it for one additional year for all language. We will move them up one step on their current scale, of the contract. We did have to adjust the bottom of the scale to meet the minimum $35,000 requirement the state had put in. So those folks did have an adjustment. Everybody else just moved up one step. But in the agreement, it also says that in the event that the state does cut funding, and I think we set the bar at $100,000 or more, the teachers will agree to go back to this year's salary, so essentially freeze their salaries. And then I also told this board that the administration would do the same thing, if the teachers would do it.
Okay, so the administrators, so everyone's in the same boat.
The administrators don't have a choice because they don't have a union.
They listen to you?
They listen to me. Sorry, guys.
No, thank you. I didn't recall hearing that very well last
Yeah,
week.
and I don't think you would have any administrator that would argue that if the teachers were going to have to be frozen, we would do the same thing right away.
Okay, thank you.
I think anytime that you have a budget, a proposed budget, that it's not an increase from the previous year, it's a good budget. That's what I'm saying.
Not an increase for the locals.
Right.
What would be your threshold bid to have to make hard choices to come back to us to make decisions about cuts and things like that?
Like I said, I think if we couldn't meet our obligations with the contracts that we have, the bargaining agreements that we have, we're in some real mess. You know, we're not gonna make payroll. We're not going to be able to, you know, that's when.
Okay.
We had a number of projects, like building projects. Did we keep any of them? We got rid of all of our building projects?
The only one that's in there is the funding for the vestibule,
Yeah, that's grant funded.
and then the ones that we can't do prior to June, they were all removed.
And-
They will be,
The manhole project, right?
the manhole project, yes, that's,
I heard that was gonna be dug out by hand. No? Okay, second.
any other projects that need to be done, we'll have to wait until May and June to see where we are at with funding available within this budget, within that budget at that
Next
time. Next year.
Okay.
Any more questions?
What do you think, Gary?
So much uncertainty.
How much of this budget is, or how much money would we get? I'm just curious, like, at the college, like, we're putting up safety measures, like, they took all the hand dryers off the wall and they put paper towel dispensers, so you won't splatter, you know, potential COVID droplets, right? Like, do we have any money in this budget for upgrades for the school?
We have, and I was gonna report this out during our regular meeting, we have been allocated $194,000 of CARES funds specific to the impact of the COVID-19. We're talking about how to apply those funds to those things that you talk about. Our whole Fort Ken Elementary has faucets that you need to hold open for the water to come out. That's not gonna, it's not gonna work, so we've gotta replace all those fountains. So all those funds, we may even talk, if things get really bad, do we reserve some of those COVID funds for budget shortfalls? There are school districts that are setting aside some of those funds for that purpose as well.
So, the original proposed, agenda had something about cost centers. and it piqued my interest. Is that gonna influence what's going on with this, like limiting, having a 5% cost center, like there's something about moving,
No, we do that every year. It just gives flexibility for Lucy to move money to.
so we just need to redo that every year?
Yeah.
I remember hearing it, but I couldn't remember what it meant.
Yeah.
So, okay, so that's not gonna have any influence on this.
The only thing we're nervous about with this referendum vote thing that just came out in the executive order, is it gonna be a bottom line vote? Do you vote for this budget like we usually see, or is it gonna be a cost center thing? I don't, given the vagueness of the language in the executive order, I don't think it's going to be the cost center vote. So do you approve cost center 1 for this vote? Do you approve cost center 2? That would be very bad, because if voters, target one cost center, then we don't have a budget approval. We're very hopeful it's gonna be just a bottom line. Do you approve this budget?
Kurt, you've been quiet.
I'm fine.
Okay.
Well, to you.
Sarah?
All the regular stuff in for extracurricular, co-curricular stuff, just in case we
I
have
have the plan as if we're in session as normal.
Keith?
I'm fine with it.
When do you anticipate knowing the structure, how it's gonna be?
We were hoping that they would have called a meeting today. It didn't happen, so maybe tomorrow.
The executive order does require that we go to present a budget within 30 days of the expiry of the executive order, which is we have to bring something to the voters by July 14th.
How are we doing mail-in voting? Are we gonna skip that?
You and Gary gonna go wrestle on the line?
Ben, are all the students gonna be provided with masks?
The department is right now, there's a survey going around throughout the state, all the schools, of which districts are requesting that the state use their own care funds to provide PPE for the entire schools, for the entire staff, for the entire students. So that's going on right now. It's also on our own CARES list of things that we're gonna earmark that money for. But yeah, we're gonna have to provide, if we're mandated to have social distancing measures and face masks, we're gonna have to have them, so, yeah.
I know my son's gonna be in kindergarten next year, and my wife and I are like, how do you do social distancing with a 5-year-old? So, I'd be very curious about what your staff is thinking
We're
about
gonna
that
be
too.
buying those pool noodle hats that extend 6 feet out.
He would
and
love
each
that.
kid was gonna have to wear one.
So I'm just curious how you,
Yeah, it's a good
Yeah.
question. We talked about those bubbles that you can just put kids in, and they're gonna, have to,
gerbil ball.
yeah.
you can do jello molds and they have to eat their way out and then school's done.
We laugh, but you're right. How do you tell, a 6-year-old to stay away from your friends, Right now, the preliminary guidance from the CDC is no cafeterias, no recesses, to stop those things. You have schools that have reopened in Quebec where, they have grids taped off on the floor and kids can't move from that grid in their classroom, and so, again.
Sounds like law school.
Yeah.
I mean,
Miss Science.
if that's the extent of it, is there gonna be like the option for
Well,
kids
then-
to stay home
Well,
and be?
and then maybe it's the option for us. Do we just go with remote learning because we know at least kids, are at home, they're safe, they're able to walk around?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Do we have any more questions on the budget?
Nope.
not on the budget.
We have a motion.
A motion to pass the budget. Is that how you do it?
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of passing the budget? Very good. Now, I have a question, seeing as the budget passed. When is it mandatory for vaccinations?
Not this upcoming school year, the following school year, which is 2021.
Okay. And at that point in time, we don't know how many kids we're gonna have.
Right.
Because people will be opposed, and just,
It removes the religious component to vaccinations, and it removes something else. It keeps the medical necessary component, But you're right, I've already received calls on when that's going to happen and if it's going to be upheld, and because folks are talking about it.
And I'm just wondering, at some point in time, there are gonna be some people that are going to choose homeschool. It would be nice to know how many, you know, if it's at all possible. It's like, you start the year thinking that you're gonna have 800 and some kids and you end up with 700, it's quite an impact.
I think it probably depends on the conditions.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
The current stay-home order, non-essential, is that teachers stay home? Is that impacting the professional development stuff?
No, the DOE remains of the opinion that although schools are to remain closed to students and staff together, they're not saying that staff should not be on site. So our PD that we've set up, we're encouraging staff to be on site. We're not gonna put them all in one room and, you know, in their classroom so they can collaborate with the teacher next door and across the hall. We do have some though that are in another country, and it's gonna be very difficult for them to cross the border without going to quarantine. We also have some that are immune compromised and they've got doctor's notes that they don't feel comfortable. So we've arranged for a digital component to work seamlessly with the live.
I had seen that NEA article about saying that recommending not.
The professional development stuff, is that gonna include subs?
No.
Do you have subs that you use often that would be a good asset for this, or no?
I think if we are if we're in the fall and we're still in this mess, we're not gonna need subs at all. How many sick days did we get requested since March 16 from our staff?
I was actually surprised that there weren't more. But and I think the reasoning behind that is, there is I think it's the CARES absence or emergency funding that allows for, if you have to quarantine yourself, isolate, there's 10 days of sick leave that we have to provide employees, and they don't have to deduct it from their own sick leave. There's also the provision of an additional 10 weeks if they have to be out for daycare issues or school closure to address to help their kids. We have at least 2 that have taken the child care, and I think 3 that took the 2-week quarantine self-isolation with a doctor's note that said it was recommended that they self-isolate due to their own medical reasons or someone they live with, their medical situation.
So, I just wanted, this is something completely off the subject, and Chair, you'll have to give me permission to talk about it.
Go for it, Toby.
Okay.
Don't be too long.
I won't be. I know you probably have vegetables in the oven or something. I just wanted to address, there was an update for Valley Unified that came out a while ago, and I saw something and I just wanted to address that it was disconcerting, and I don't know if you all saw it, but it gave a rundown of how the straw poll went. And the numbers it gave were the raw numbers of total people who voted in favor of site and total people who voted against it. It troubled me because that's not how we decided to vote on it. We decided, all of our boards together, not just us, but SC33 Madawaska, that we were gonna vote based on community, not based on total aggregate votes like a popular vote. I think it was a little distressing to me to see a number that was one that we all agreed we weren't going to use, being used for public relations.
Really?
Yeah.
Can I see that? Can you bring that up?
It was the last update from Valley Unified, one back in May.
Can we,
Sorry,
as
I've been,
the
you don't have to.
board, get the updates from Valley Unified? Because I don't get any information.
Just look, I gotta go online, I go looking. You can look a little bit there. You know what I mean?
I got,
And you don't have to do that. I'm just saying.
It doesn't just do text
There's no
messaging.
Cabela's catalog, there's no LL Bean
So
catalog.
are you talking about the Val Unified blog?
It was like a fact sheet. It had different colors. It was like orange, I want to say. Orange
Peter,
yellow.
did you wanna?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I can address that. That is a quarterly progress report
There we go.
that we put out on the status of the tri-district strategic planning process. And that was the 7th quarterly report. And we did, Toby's absolutely right, we did use aggregate numbers in reporting the total votes when we put that out. And I will accept responsibility for that. I'm the one who puts that out. And that's absolutely right. There was an agreement that we would not use aggregate voting. And I did in reporting on the progress regarding the new school. So that's the issue, and we'll correct that in forthcoming progress reports. So we just won't use the aggregate voting.
Thank you.
It's, you know,
You're welcome.
it kind of goes to what the stuff we talked about earlier, where, you know, it's words are important. And accuracy is important.
Yeah.
Well, it felt like that in Valley Unified when, you know, they were, the other districts were, well, it's a majority rules kind of thing, and I was like, wow, kind of, sort of. You know, we said that our district was like up in the middle about what we thought about going forward, so.
But I think that's
you're
the
right.
question, that's the question I mean, is that a question we need to ask ourselves, and when do we ask ourselves the question of what that 50-50 split means for us? I mean, when do we ask that question?
Retreat?
Yeah.
Well,
What do you think, Frank? What do you think, Jake? When do we address the 50-50 issue? We've been told it's our issue to deal with.
I think that, I don't know, right now, I would say, I wish we could have addressed it sooner,
No, we can't.
but,
Well, you guys are meeting, you know, think tank here, and the issue has to be.
you guys are meeting on the 8th or 9th, right?
Yeah, we're gonna talk about the RSU, I mean, but I think this board, I mean, one way or the other, there's not many I mean, we couldn't have, if we flip a coin 100 times, it's never gonna land on its edge again. And it did. I mean, it's a weird situation. I mean, if it was a motion before this board and we had 6 people here and it was 3-3, it would fail.
if this was a typical situation, and it doesn't seem to be, but, most oftentimes, I think you would want to sit down together and say, okay, what can we do to make this a more favorable majority, right? To get you where you want to be, and that didn't happen with this vote, right? It was 50-50, and it wasn't favorable to where the site selection was in Frenchville, right? And so I would dare say you would want to reconvene and sit down and say, what can we do to make this more favorable, to get more people to agree on consensus, to have a site where you want it to be. Does that make sense, guys? So how do we address that, right? And maybe with the formation of the URSU, you know, we can bring up our point and say we want proportional voting, but at the same time, we have to discuss that 50% of SCD 27 didn't want it to be there, and maybe we need to reevaluate or discuss the site selection process.
Yeah, but the RSU would be after the fact, right?
Well, yeah, but we don't have to go into the RSU. I mean, it's kind of a choke point to talk about things, like here we are,
Yeah.
like we're either gonna join you or we're not.
Yeah.
These are the things that are concerning. I mean, it's gonna force us to talk about things that we've not had to talk about because we could get bowled over.
Yeah.
I mean, we've never been able, I mean, we can raise objections in Valley Unified meetings every time, and they'll just say bad things about us when we leave the room, and then they'll turn the camera off. But, I mean, that's how it works, but now we're at a point where we have to have a conversation. Sarah, what do you think?
Well, I think just building on his, where you talk about doing something, or what can we do to change to make it more favorable, but like the point that Gary brought up is a lot of the publicity that went out said if you vote no, the project dies. And so I think that had a huge impact, I agree that I think it had an impact on the vote, and I don't think that it tips the scales in a favorable way. So we'd have to do even more work or be more drastic about making it favorable, because I think the actual number, the actual tally is probably not 50-50.
Wouldn't it make sense then to ask the commissioner to come up? I mean, it sounds like she was highly supportive.
She can't do anything, and she made it clear to us, like, this
No,
isn't
but
her
she
baby.
could, but she could actually speak, in favor of that, and then it's still a local decision that's gonna be made.
As far as I'm concerned, a 50-50 vote is a failed vote in favor of. That's what it is. It's definitely not, I mean, it's a failed vote. It means that we do not support
It's not
moving forward.
consensus,
That's what it
right?
is.
You didn't get,
Well, it's not a valid vote because you put misinformation out there to the public and had them vote with inaccurate information.
Well, first of
So
all,
we have another straw poll, so we get an accurate vote.
this was a non-binding straw poll. This is used to gauge community support for the overall project.
Correct.
So now we know what our community's overall support is, 50-50,
Right.
originally, at the time of the straw poll.
Yes.
Now, we don't know which way or the other.
Right.
So, once we get through all the steps in the process, we're still gonna have a vote, our communities are still gonna have a vote whether to accept the school or not. Am I correct, Gary?
Right, but we're working on a site that SAD 27 probably does not support.
And that's the message you need to relay next week?
That along with the proportion.
It's, simple as that.
I think that's a
So,
good way to approach it.
Does the board, if that's what Gary and I go in with, that's acceptable?
You agree with that, group?
Yeah.
Any further discussions? You guys like that? I mean, when are we gonna have the retreat?
I'm planning it already. You didn't miss me, did you there, Mary Ann?
Hey, I missed
I missed this.